Hello, hello.
Amen. Yeah, here we are. Where did we leave off?
169. Top of
Okay.
169 in the PDF. And towards the top of page 361 in the blue book. Second paragraph, where the second paragraph begins, actually. And I think that's the second paragraph on page 169 too. Yep. Where we are told in the esoteric teaching. So that's where we'll start today.
Yeah, well, we know we're getting into, these chapter heads and these section heads do not do justice to the thought forms that are built in to the training that we get out of it are so immense. It's so important. It's so profound and critical. It's really difficult to express in a chapter head that says something like, the future and the past, or
Right.
Doesn't do what we're here justice. And
right. So it's the present age and the future, but agreed, doesn't do it justice. And we're still in rule 10, very, 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 very lengthy rule. But important that we cover it in the I think the timeliness that we have, because there's a lot in there, as we've found, to really take in and clarify within. So there's been a lot of good stuff in all of this. But anyway, should we get right into it?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
I'll get us started here.
Yeah, sounds
again
good.
Today. Since you read a lot in our other videos, so
yes,
I'll lift the burden off you for a little bit here, my friend.
I love it.
All right. So we are told in the esoteric teaching that all three aspects of divinity are themselves triple, and hence we can divide the energy of mind as far as humanity is concerned into three aspects also. We have therefore, 1, the lower concrete mind, called the Chitta, or mind stuff in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. 2, the abstract mind, or that aspect of the mind which is related to the world of ideas. And 3, the intuition or pure reason, which is for man the highest aspect of the mentality. These three find their overshadowing or enveloping field of expression in the third aspect of the Logos, which we call the universal mind, the active, intelligent deity. The lines of force from these three lower aspects lead back, if one may use so inadequate an expression, onto the third plane, as the astral lines of force lead back to the second or monadic plane, though as far as man's consciousness is concerned, they only lead back to the Buddhic or intuitional plane. So as we talk through that, think of the Constitution of Man chart that we've discussed much about in earlier videos. And I'm wondering, would that be a good thing for us to post as a reference? Or you do have it posted in the description of the videos, I think,
I believe
right?
so.
Okay.
I believe so.
So yeah.
And I think that third plane that he's talking about, that's the atmic plane, right? And we're just kind of here, we're just relating the planes to one another in a way, like the reflections of the planes, essentially, with the third being connected to the fifth, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the two lines, the 1, 3, 5, 7, and then the 2, 4, 6, which are essentially the synthetic and bridging, or the bridging planes, right? They're the connectors, I want to say, in a sense, right? More or less. With the fourth being the one connecting the human and the spiritual. that number 4 always being very interesting in this whole thing, because you got the lower 3, and then you got the higher 3, and then you got the 4th, which is really bridging the 2.
Right.
And then there's all the different connections between them. And then there's also real heavy connections between the subplanes with the planes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, it's just really good to be looking on, looking at all that, because then you got the second plane is the monadic plane, and that's connected to the astral, which is the 6th. Is that what we're seeing there? The astral lines of force lead back to the 2nd or the monadic plane. And then, though, as far as man's consciousness is concerned, it goes back to the Buddhic or the intuitional plane, which is the 4th. And that's why we're always saying, and Carla is always referencing, the astral plane is meant to be that reflection, the lower reflection of it, but because it's the playground, the expression can be so abstracted that things can get very wonky down on the astral plane.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. It is interesting to note that just as the monad, impelled by desire, produces that form of life, which we call the personality, so the mind aspect, as part of the purpose working out through the universal mind, in its form produces that manifestation, which we call a Manasaputra, the great son of mind on the mental plane. Hence, it is the mind principle in humanity which brings into manifestation the egoic body, the causal vehicle, the Karana Sarira, the 12-petaled lotus. We are, of course, talking entirely in terms of the form aspect here. The reason for this lies back on the cosmic planes, whereon the planetary logos has his life. From the cosmic astral plane comes the impulse which produces form, existence, and concrete expression. For all form taking is the result of desire. From the cosmic mental plane comes the will to be in time and space, which produces the 7 groups of egoic lives and the 3rd outpouring. It will be seen then inferentially how the right use of energy by the initiate puts him on rapport not only with the higher planes of the solar system, but also with those cosmic planes whereon our logos has his personality aspect, using 3 words in symbolic fashion. The right use of physical energy by the initiate gives him the freedom of the cosmic physical plane. The right use of astral energy gives him power on the cosmic astral, and the correct use of mental energy gives him entrance onto the cosmic mental. Inferentially, then, the 3 higher centers in man, when functioning perfectly, play their part in this work of carrying energies from these exalted spheres into the field of activity of the initiate and of being doorways into realms hitherto closed to him. Each center or chakra is composed of 3 concentric interblending whorls or wheels, which in the spiritual man upon the probationary path move slowly in one direction, but gradually quicken their activity as he nears the portal of the path of initiation. On initiation, the center of the chakra, a point of latent fire, is touched, and the rotation becomes intensified and the activity 4th dimensional. It is difficult to express these ideas in words that can be comprehended by the uninitiated, but the effect could be described as a changing from a measured turn to one of a scintillating radiation, a wheel turning upon itself, as the ancient scriptures express it. Hence, when by purification, conformity to rule, and an aspiration that brooks no hindrance and that ceases not for pain, the aspirant has caused his centers to pulsate and to rotate, then and only then can the master lead him into the presence of the Hierophant. The initiator then, with full knowledge of the disciple's ray and of his sub-ray, both egoic and personal, and recognizing any karma that still may cling, touches the center or centers which are in line for vivification, and the hidden fire will then rush up and become focalized. Remember always that in the vivification of a center, there is always a corresponding vitalization of the analogous head center, till eventually the 7 centers in the body and the 7 centers in the head rotate in unison. Remember also that just as the 4 minor rays pass into the 3 major rays, so the 4 minor centers carry on the correspondence and pass into pralaya, finding their focal point in the throat center. Thus, you will have the 3 centers, head, heart, and throat, carrying the inner fire, with the 3 major head centers vibrating in unison also.
Well, buddy, that's just so much wrapped up in that. Again, it's incredible. And that's the whole process that we're talking about, wrapped up in into a paragraph here.
Right.
And you can see, he's telling us that if you are feeling, if you understand that the rotation, if you can sense the rotation of your centers, and they're becoming intensified, then you can see that you're doing the right work. First of all, if it's growing, if the rotation is growing, you're doing the right work, you're on the right track, you're moving ahead, essentially in the right direction. And afterwards, the recognition would be from a measured turn, like where you're measuring this and your beingness, and you've been working at this to grow this thing, or at least we perceive it that way, to one of a scintillating radiation, which at that point, it's more of a constant. It's not a rotating in the same way anymore. It's more of a constant thing. And it's more fullness. There's more fullness to it. And through this, you can really, somebody on the path, I want to say, we can see the direction that this takes.
Mm-hmm.
We can imagine it, because if things are moving, we can imagine this direction. And if early on it says, all the books say, we feel it at our ajna center,
mm-hmm.
and the ajna is generally moving faster than our head center. And the need is to get the center at the top of the head moving more. And this will grow. And then it will, just keep it going. That's all I'm saying. This is the work. This is the work. This is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It lays it out for us right here. And this is the direction it takes. And we can be comfortable in that. And we can know that. And we can give into it, dude. So much. Yeah. All right. Sorry. I didn't mean to go off.
Oh, no. That's good to clarify some of that. So thus you'll have the 3 head centers, or the 3 centers, head, heart, throat, carrying the inner fire, with the 3 major head centers vibrating in unison also. I realize that this is all intricate and technical. It has its place and value, however, and much that here is communicated will find its usefulness when you are all passed over to the other side, and a fresh band of aspirants will follow in your footsteps. The training of the mental body has a value, and many evade such technicalities, hiding behind an emphasis upon the life side of truth, all due to an inherent mental laziness. This that you now receive is but the ABC of esotericism. Waste not time, however, in too detailed deduction. all that is now possible is a broad general outline, patient reserve, a willingness to recognize physical brain limitations, and the accepting of a hypothesis. Believe these hypotheses possible unless your intuition revolts or they are contradicted by past teaching given by other of the lodge's messengers. I do not dogmatize to you. I only in these instructions give you certain information, the correctness of which I leave the future to demonstrate. I simply ask that you make record, and in the coming years, much that may now seem peculiar or mayhap even contradictory will be elucidated, slowly unraveled and more easily comprehended. A little knowledge leads to much confusion unless laid aside for future use when the years of instruction have increased the store.
You know, and as far as I'm concerned, you and I are attesting to this.
Yeah.
I am willing to say that I find this to be 100% accurate in my own beingness. Now, that's not to say, like he says, don't listen to me. I'm not trying to put it on anybody else either, but we're, passing it along as accurate. And
well, and a little knowledge leads to much confusion unless laid aside for future use when the years of instruction have increased the store. So the reading of the words is important, like we've talked about before, because it's essentially feeding the information that we'll need as we kind of progress. Well, it may seem confusing now. You have to trust, I guess, what it is that you're reading, and that it has its purpose.
I say this all the time. It does require a level of faith.
Absolutely.
Initially. But after a period of faith, it will become known. And it'll become known. And then it's yours. And then it's your instruction to give too. We make the teachings our own. And he says that. And
right.
And because you can recognize the validity. And if just because you don't recognize the validity today as truth doesn't mean another turn around turn around the zodiac doesn't mean next year you may absolutely recognize this to be fully true after going through a cycle of this. It takes some time to get used to it, and that's not fast like anybody wants it to be.
Right.
It's just
well, yeah, and over time it may speak to you in a different way too. So there's also always that to consider. So
just keep moving, keep going forward.
But that's really more attesting to just that constant evolution, right? So without further ado, to return to our theme, the heart center in man opens the door into what is called the heart of the sun. The throat center opens to the way into full understanding of the path of the physical sun, and all true astrologers must eventually have that center functioning. The head center opens the way to the central spiritual sun, each passing via the planetary correspondence to one of the cosmic planes. Thus, we have a summation of technicalities and of facts which are, under the law of analogy, of purely academic interest and no more. Even those of us who are initiate know practically nothing of the cosmic planes beyond the cosmic physical. Our consciousness is only beginning to be solar, and we are laboring in our small measure to overcome those planetary limitations which hold us back from solar knowledge and life. For aspirants who have not even a knowledge of what planetary consciousness signifies, the above information has only one value, and that is that it emphasizes the synthetic nature of the great plan and the fact that the smallest unit is an integral part of the whole. It enforces the idea that energy is a life fluid circulating throughout the entire body of the Logos, and vivifying, therefore, even the tiniest atom in that whole. It is valuable to endeavor to grasp the picture and to vision the wonder of what is transpiring. It is waste of time, nevertheless, to ponder upon the cosmic astral plane, for instance, when even the plane of the ego, the fifth subplane of the cosmic physical plane, counting from above downwards. So back to that chart we were talking about earlier. So when even the plane of the ego is as yet inaccessible to the average man and is the goal for all his aspiration and meditation. For man, therefore, the universal mind can be best grasped as it has expressed itself through what we call the concrete mind, the abstract mind, and the intuition or pure reason. The concrete mind, oops, went a little too far there. The concrete mind is the form-building faculty. Thoughts are things. The abstract mind is the pattern-building faculty, or the mind which works with the blueprints upon which the forms are modeled. The intuition, or pure reason, is the faculty which enables man to enter into contact with the universal mind and grasp the plan synthetically to seize upon divine ideas or isolate some fundamental and pure truth. The goal of all the work of an aspirant is to understand those aspects of the mind with which he has to learn to work. His work, therefore, might be summed up as follows. 1. He has to learn to think, to discover that he has an apparatus which is called the mind and to uncover its faculties and powers. These have been well analyzed for us in the first 2 books of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. 2, he has to learn next to get back of his thought processes and form building propensities and discover the ideas which underlie the divine thought form, the world process, and so learn to work in collaboration with the plan and subordinate his own thought form building to these ideas. He has to learn to penetrate into the world of these divine ideas and to study the pattern of things in the heavens, as it is called in the Bible. He must begin to work with the blueprints upon which all that is modeled and molded. He becomes then a student symbolist, and from being an idolater, he becomes a divine idealist. I use these words in their true sense and connotation.
Hey.
So he's talking a lot. He's been making a lot of reference to symbols and symbolisms here. And
how crazy is that, man?
You just did a video a couple days ago, and a lot of that's being covered in our study on Glamour, a World Problem, as we read through that. So it just expresses the importance of taking on the study of symbols. So
this part right here, the ideas which underlie the divine thought form, we learn to penetrate into that, and we study the pattern of the things, and in that study of seeing these things, I want to say, you recognize how critical thought is and how desire has changed and affected this entire landscape of this world.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we're looking at, aside from the grass and trees and the elements, is a result, in a way, of some level of desire. Most of it is not based on need.
Mm-hmm.
So then we know in our beingness, we have to be very careful about protecting our mind and our thoughts and what we're allowing out. It's very important. I can't say it.
Yeah.
There's no way to stress it, because this has to be known by each of us.
Well, yeah, excuse me. And I think you and I have talked a little bit before. I don't know if on video or not, but I know in our personal conversations have talked a bit about, when you have those thought forms, to kind of choose your words wisely as far as the physical expression of those thought forms goes, if you even feel the need that you have to make a physical expression of those thought forms.
Yeah, it's like pulling a trigger, bro.
Right.
Right? It's like you have the gun, in the form, and it's filled with these bullets, but it's up to you whether you're going to pull the trigger or not.
Right.
And the direction that projectile is going.
Right. Right.
How much damage, I guess, what that bullet's filled with.
Right.
Weird analogy, but I mean, it works actually.
Yeah. So it's important to know what you're going through and kind of bring that to bay, and then be smart with your verbal expression of your thought forms. Now, if you don't even have a clear understanding of what it is that you're going through, you've got no business even throwing those thought forms out. Yeah.
Hence the need for this training.
You're just going to do more damage than good. And we see that quite a bit out there these days. People letting their emotions run awry and kind of expressing themselves verbally, and you see the damage that some of that can do. So just food for thought. Keep that in mind.
Huge,
and
man.
Be careful of how you communicate. Right.
You're a wise man. How do we get this out to how do we put this out and get this to penetrate deeper, that not what we're saying, but the need for this training, the need for this understanding, the need for this illumination that can be brought about by this material. It's not about what you and I say. It's about what's all contained in this, and getting this somehow to penetrate the collective. Well,
it's a lot there.
Father wills it.
So I'll read back over to again, since we just discussed it a little bit. So he has to learn next to get back of his thought processes inform building propensities, discover the ideas which underlie the divine thought form, the world process, and so learn to work in collaboration with the plan to subordinate his own thought form building to these ideas. He has to learn to penetrate into the world of these divine ideas and to study the pattern of things in the heavens, as it is called in the Bible. He must begin to work with blueprints upon which all that is modeled and molded. He becomes then a student symbolist, and from being an idolater, he becomes a divine idealist. I use these words in their true sense and connotation. 3, from that developed idealism, he must progress even deeper still until he enters the realm of pure intuition. He then can tap the truth and he then can tap the truth at its source. He enters into the mind of God himself. He intuits as well as idealizes and is sensitive to divine thoughts. They fertilize his mind. He calls these intuitions later, and he works them out, ideas or ideals, and bases all his work and conduct of affairs upon them. 4, then follows the work of conscious thought form building, based upon these divine ideas, emanating as intuitions from the universal mind. This goes forward through meditation. Every true student knows that this involves concentration in order to focus or orient the lower mind to the higher. Temporarily, the normal thought form building tendencies are inhibited. Through meditation, which is the mind's power to hold itself in the light, and in that light becomes aware of the plan, he learns to bring through the needed ideas. Through contemplation, he finds himself able to enter into that silence, which will enable him to tap the divine mind, wrest God's thoughts out of the divine consciousness, and to know. This is the work before each aspirant, and hence the necessity of his understanding the nature of his mental problem. The tools with which he must perforce work, and the use he must make of what he learns and gains through the right use of the mental apparatus. Let me read that again. This is the work before each aspirant, and hence the necessity of his understanding the nature of his mental problem, the tools with which he must perforce work, and the use he must make of what he learns and gains through the right use of the mental apparatus. How is this to be done? How bring through and how build afterwards? No matter how small or unimportant an individual thinker may be, yet in cooperation with his brethren, he wields a mighty force. Only through the steady, strong, right thinking of the people and the understanding of the correct use of mental energy can progressive evolution go forward along the desired lines. Right thinking depends upon many things, and it might be useful to state some of them very simply. 1, an ability to sense the vision. That involves a capacity in a faint measure to realize the archetype on which the lodge is endeavoring to fashion the race. It involves cooperation in the work of the Manu and the development of abstract as well as synthetic thought, the flashing forth of the intuition. The intuition rests from the high places, a touch of the ideal plan as it lies latent in the mind of the Logos. As men develop this capacity, they will touch sources of power that are not on mental levels at all, but which constitute those from which the mental plane itself draws sustenance. 2, then, having sensed the vision and glimpsed a fraction of the beauty, how little men see is astounding. So let me read that again. Then, having sensed the vision and glimpsed a fraction of the beauty, in your hands lies the opportunity to bring down to the mental plane as much of the plan as you possibly can. Nebulous and faint at first is your grasp after it, yet it will begin to materialize. Seldom at first will you find that you can contact it, for the vision comes through the medium of the causal body, and few can hold that high consciousness for a long time. But the struggle to apprehend will lead to results, and little by little, the idea will seep through to the concrete levels of the mental plane. Then it becomes a concrete thought, something that can be definitely visualized and appropriated as a basis for thought. 3, this accomplished, what comes next? A period of gestation, a period wherein you build your thought form of as much of the vision as fowl can bring through in your consciousness. Slowly must this be done, for a stable vibration and a well-built form is desired. Hurried work leads to nowhere. Again, hurried work leads to nowhere. So this takes time. Don't rush it. As you build, there will gradually be sensed a longing, a desire to see this vision brought to earth and see it becoming known to others among the sons of men. Then you vitalize the thought form with the power of your will. You seek to make it be. The rhythm becomes heavier and slower. The material built into your form is necessarily coarser. And you find that your thought form of the vision is clothed in matter of the mental and astral planes. 4, happy the disciple who can bring the vision nearer still to humanity and work it into existence on the physical plane. Remember this, the materialization of any aspect of the vision on the physical plane is never the work of one man. Only when it has been sensed by the many, only when they have worked at its material form can their united efforts draw it into outer manifestation. Thus, you see the value of educating public opinion. It brings the many helpers to the aid of the few visionaries. Always the law holds good. In dissent, differentiation. The two or three sense the plan intuitively. Then the rhythm they set up with their thought sweeps the mental plane matter into activity. Thinkers seize hold of the idea. This is a hard thing to learn and difficult to do, but the reward is great. To those who wrestle, strive, and hold on, the joy is doubled when the materialization comes. The joy of contrast will be yours. For knowing the past of darkness, you will revel in the light of fruition. The joy of tried and tested companionship will be yours. For years will have proved to you who are your chosen associates, and in community of suffering will come the strengthened link. The joy of peace after victory will be yours. For to the tired warrior, the fruits of achievement and rest are doubly sweet. The joy of participation in the master's plan will be yours, which is plan 369. And all is well that associates you closely with them. The joy of having helped to solace a needy world, of having brought light to darkened souls, of having healed in some measure the open sore of the world's distress, will be yours, and in the consciousness of days well spent, and in the gratitude of salvaged souls, comes the deepest joy of all. The joy a master knows when he is instrumental in lifting a brother up a little higher on the ladder. This is the joy that is set before you all, and not so very far ahead it lies. So work not for joy, but towards it, not for reward, but from the inner need to help, not for gratitude, but from the urge that comes from having seen the vision and realization of the part you have to play in bringing that vision down to earth. It is helpful to differentiate between happiness, joy, and bliss. First, happiness, which has its seat in the emotions and is a personality reaction. Second, joy, which is a quality of the soul and is realized in the mind when alignment takes place. And then third, bliss, which is the nature of the spirit and about which speculation is fruitless until the soul realizes its oneness with the Father. This realization follows upon an earlier stage wherein the personal self is at one with the soul. Therefore, speculation and analysis as to the nature of bliss is profitless to the average man, whose metaphors and terminologies must perforce be personal and related to the world of the senses. Does the aspirant refer to his happiness or joy? If he refers to the latter, must come as the effect of group consciousness, of group solidarity, of oneness with all beings, and may not be interpreted in terms of happiness after all. Happiness comes when the personality is meeting with those conditions which satisfy it in one part or other of its lower nature. It comes when there is a sense of physical well-being, of contentment with one's environment or surrounding personalities, or of satisfaction with one's mental opportunities and contacts. Happiness is the goal of the separated self. Throat's getting a little parched there. When, however, we seek to live as souls, the contentment of the lower man is discounted, and we find joy in our group's relationships, and in bringing about those conditions which lead to the better expression of the souls of those we contact. This bringing of joy to others in order to produce conditions in which they may better express themselves may have a physical effect as we seek to better their material conditions, or an emotional effect as our presence brings to them peace and uplift, or an intellectual result as we stimulate them to clarify of thought and understanding. But the effect upon ourselves is joy, for our action has been selfless and non-acquisitive, and not dependent upon the aspirant's circumstances or worldly state. Much happiness is necessarily foregone when ill health makes its pressure felt, as the environment is difficult and the accumulated karma of many births presses down, or as the troubles of the family, nation, or race weigh upon the sensitive personality. The happiness of youth, or the self-centered contentment of the selfish, insulated person, hiding himself behind the shield of his protective desires, must not be confounded with joy. It is a platitude as well as an occult paradox to say that in the midst of profound personality distress and unhappiness, the joy of the soul may be known and felt. Such, however, is the case, and it is for this the student must aim. Some people are happy because they shut their eyes to truth, or are self-hypnotized, hiding themselves within a shell of illusion. But the aspirant has frequently reached the stage wherein his eyes are wide open. He has learned to speak truth to himself and has built up no separating wall between himself and others. He is awake and alive. He is sensitive and frequently suffering. He wonders why, apparently, what the world calls happiness and peace have left him, and asks what is to be the outcome. We who watch the guide on the inner side watch the loving care of all you who struggle in the thick of the fray. We are like the general headquarters staff who follow the course of the battle from a secure eminence. In our security lies your ultimate success, for we hold in our hands the solution of many problems and apply that solution when the battle goes contrary. One thing always would I have you remember. It is of vital importance. It is this statement, that in the destruction of the form lies hid the secret of all evolution. Think not this is truism. You will see it in constant application and need to be prepared for its demonstration. The masters utilize the form to the uttermost. They seek to work through it, imprisoning the life in confining walls for just as long as the purpose is served and the race instructed through that form. Then the time comes that the form no longer serves the purpose intended, when the structure atrophies, crystallizes, and becomes easily destructible. Its destruction then becomes the matter of greatest concern and usefulness, and it goes whilst a new form takes its place. Watch and see if this be not so. Always the building of the form, always its utilization for as long as possible, always the destruction of the form when it hinders and cramps the expanding light, always then the rapid reconstruction of a new form. Such has been the method since the commencement of the aeon. In the infancy of the race, the forms endured for a long time. Evolution moved more slowly, but now, on the upward trend of all things, the form has but short duration. It lives vitally for a brief period. It moves with rapidity and then is succeeded by another form. This rapidity will increase, not decrease, as the consciousness of inner expansion of the life of the race vibrates ever to a faster and lighter rate of rhythm. It is necessary likewise that you arrive at the realization that one of the principal objects of endeavor at the present time of the part of those whom you call the elder brothers of the race is to stimulate, purify, and coordinate the etheric body. This etheric body is not only the transmitter of prana, but is the medium for all the energies which we are considering. Its importance also lies in other directions. A, being a physical plane matter, literally, etheric consciousness is the next step ahead for the race. This will demonstrate it first as the ability to see etherically and to cognize etheric matter. B, it is the field of exploration immediately ahead of the modern scientist. In 10 years' time, many medical practitioners will be recognizing it as a fact of nature. C, most of the diseases that the physical body suffers from at present have their roots in the etheric body. There are few, if any, purely physical diseases. Disease has its source in astral and etheric conditions. The secret of safe and sane, this is B, the secret of safe and sane clairvoyance and clairaudience depends upon the purification of the etheric vehicle. And E, the etheric emanations of people can be great contaminators. In the purification, therefore, of this body lies the secret of a sweeter and saner humanity. Hence the importance of the etheric. There are many other reasons which will later be emphasized. In beginning to form your ideas on the subject, however, it is the part of wisdom to adhere to wide generalities until the whole matter has taken clear shape in your mind. Work on the etheric body, however, from the standpoint of the hierarchy, is not confined only to the bodies of men. It is a planetary process. The etheric body of the earth itself is being subjected to a definite stimulation. The spirit of the earth, that mysterious entity, not the planetary logos, is being vivified in a new sense, and in his vivification, many interesting developments eventuate. In 3 ways, this is being attempted. One, by an increased rate of vibration of the etheric atoms caused by the coming in of the ceremonial ray. This must not be pictured as a sudden and violent change. From the standpoint of the human student, the rate of increase is apparently so slow and gradual as to be inappreciable. Nevertheless, the stimulation exists, and in the course of centuries will be recognized. Two, by the play of certain astral forces on the etheric body that leads to slow but definite changes in the internal structure of the atom, the coming into consciousness of another of the spirale, and a general tightening up of the whole cosmos of the atom. Three, by the use on the inner planes by the Mahachakhan on one of the powerful talismans of the seventh ray. The spirit of the earth, it might be noted, is of slow and gradual arousing. He is on the involutionary arc and passes on to the evolutionary in some dim and distant future. Therefore, he will not carry us with him, but he serves our purpose now, offering us a home within his body, yet remaining disassociated from us. The divas of the ethers from this very stimulation are consequently hastening forward in evolution and approximating also nearer to their ideal. In all, I have said, anent the etheric body of men, anent the planet, anent the spirit of the earth, the crux of the whole situation lies in the fact that the five rays at this time have the seventh ray as their predominating ray. The seventh ray is the ray that controls the etheric and the divas of the ethers. It controls the seventh subplane of all planes, but it dominates at this time the seventh subplane of the physical plane. Being in the fourth round also, when a ray comes into definite incarnation, it not only controls on planes of the same number, but has a special influence on the fourth subplane. Note how this works at this time in the three worlds. One, the fourth ether, the lowest of the ethers, is to be the next physical plane of consciousness. Etheric matter is even now becoming visible to some, and will be entirely visible at the end of the century to many. Two, the fourth subplane of the astral holds the majority of men when they pass over, and consequently much work on the greatest number can therefore be accomplished. And three, the fourth mental subplane is the plane of devotion. And that brings us to a close of the subsection on the present
You just
age and the
threw
future.
that on me there, that last part there.
Yeah.
That number three, the very last statement there, is something that is going to require some serious contemplation. All of it. It's huge, man. This etheric vision, it seems like it should have been more prevalent by now.
Yeah, because we got to remember this book was written at the turn of the last century, pretty much, or early in the 20th century. And so, yeah, a lot of this was supposed to have come into manifestation at the close and entering into the close of the 20th and entering into the 21st. So we're probably a little bit behind.
Now, there's many that have this vision, and there's many that, it's been around for a long time, and it's progressed science greatly. Science has progressed. It's stimulated much science. They found the elements, and they determined the elements with etheric vision. They see how we can see diseases and how they actually work with this, and how the elements, how they're made up, and the functioning of this stuff. So etheric vision has helped humanity in a lot of ways already. It's just apparent it's not, we have just not gotten to the point yet where it's becoming a common a common thing yet. But with the seventh ray, I guess maybe that's something that will hopefully come about. This bottom statement's going to have me confused all day. I'll tell you that. Not confused, but that's what I'll be pondering on. David Chan is, it's. I want to say that's illusion. I want to say that's. David Chan is very Buddhist. It's very the Tibetan Book of the Dead discusses it heavily, and say it's another, that's very serious. I don't know. There's deep implications in that for us. But anyway, all right. So we did cover a lot there, right?
Yeah. Yes, we did.
I don't want to, I do that a lot where I see the last thing and it's just like a culmination of everything that we just covered, but we went through this part of joy, that was intense. This
Yep.
happiness,
Joy, and bliss.
That's deep in and of itself. Joy is something that I think in my own experience, if that's I just like to say, it's something that it like wells up in you in a way. Like it's almost like it's a different thing than it is very different than happiness. And bliss has been explained in so many different ways to where it's like it's where the polarity meets, I want to say, if that makes sense. It's like and here he says it's like a combination of that. So it's intense. I don't know when that. I don't know how that, you don't stay in those states permanently or anything. I don't know.
Well, I imagine, and I think I remember Carla talking about the differences between these three in earlier videos. But that state of bliss is, well, it says it right here, the nature of spirit about which speculation is fruitless until the soul realizes its oneness with the Father. So isn't that something that's constant once you get up
a
certain level? I want to say I remember earlier videos discussing that a bit. Well, no, I'm not indicating that I'm there.
There's that Sat Chit Ananda, which is what being consciousness bliss or consciousness being bliss. When you get to that state, it probably is. Becomes permanent. Now for us dealing on these levels. We're still dealing with a lot of karma, man. And it's said that we're given work to do. So we're not going to be in that state full time.
Sure. Definitely.
I don't believe.
Yeah.
And we're going to, we can definitely experience the joy when that connection is made and that alignment is there. And that, and that's enough to keep us going, I want to say.
Right.
We're getting those moments, or however you want to call it, of joy or even bliss. I don't want to go into the bliss thing, because I don't have a clue.
Well, right. And we could be experiencing joy thinking it's bliss, but not really experiencing bliss, if that makes any sense. There's a definite differentiation that we feel and see between happiness and joy.
And then there's that time where, I want to say fire, fire, when the fire is active in you or something, and you're setting on the line between pain and pleasure. I know that that's referred to as bliss. And it's said our God is a consuming fire, and there's all these things. So there's something there for that, but I can't say. I don't want to go too deep. I don't dare. I don't know. I know it is blissful to, but I don't know. The fire is blissful. Because it's both pain and extreme. It's like it's just walking on that fine point of in between the pain and pleasure, extreme pain and extreme pleasure at the exact same time. It's like an ecstatic thing. Like, I think that'd be a good way to explain that. Maybe. If we can pull these things into words, I don't know. But when I felt joy, I remember some of the times specifically when I felt real joy.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost like a welling up, like the sky is gonna crash on you full of love, or
Sure.
joy is just like embracing the world around you or something. In that beingness, when you're just being, and it's like, wow, this is amazing.
Well, I wonder if another way of looking at these could be, because I look at happiness, and that's like a short spurt based on an emotional reaction to something, right? And you mentioned like that you're mentioning a state of ecstasy. Were you associating that with joy, or? No, not really. Okay. I kind of looked at it two different ways, but you're exactly right. Because I would say that a sense, if we're even using the terminology for ecstasy, right? But if that could probably be a happiness driven thing, because a lot of that can just be short spurts of emotional reaction that make you, hey, I'm happy about this, and then it fades. Hey, I'm happy about this, and then it fades. And that's astral, right? Right. Which is a response to something here. But joy is not a response to anything happening in your environment. Joy is something that comes about. Yeah. It's a connection. Your whole life could be in shambles, but if the alignment is there, then you're going to experience that joy. And then that's when you recognize love, I want to say when love comes to you somehow, you recognize that you're not loving anything. You're not expressing the love. You are love with no object of love. It's just flowing through you, and it's not it just is. It's just so there's that. I'm sure joy is that, and bliss is that kind of thing as well, as where happiness is related to some joke that or something happening on the physical plane. I'm saying one's going up and the other one's coming down. Mm-hmm. Right? One's starting at the bottom, the other one's starting from the top. Yeah, and it probably is worth reading. I just looked in here as you were talking about that. in the paragraph under bliss, there's that question: does the aspirant refer to his happiness or joy? If it refers to the latter, so the joy, it must come as the effect of group consciousness, of group solidarity, of oneness with all beings, and may not be interpreted in terms of happiness after all. Happiness comes when the personality is meeting with those conditions which satisfy in it one part or other of its lower nature, like you just said. It comes when there is a sense of physical well-being, of contentment with one's environment or surrounding personalities, or of satisfaction with one's mental opportunities and contacts. Happiness is the goal of the separated self. So happiness makes it sound a bit selfish, doesn't it?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's temporary, and I mean,
yeah, and it's very self-directed is what it seems, or self-absorbed.
Yeah,
because it's your separated self. It's not, it doesn't have that aspect of effect on the group consciousness or being at oneness or at oneness with all.
I want to
all
say
beings.
that joy, when you're really experiencing that in an emotional way, that soul is coming down into the lower levels there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because on the mental plane, or especially on the higher levels of the mental plane, and I don't know, but I'm assuming there's the levels as it continues. It's more of it's just quiet. It's subtle, right? It's not emotional, it's not emotional. It just is. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's more serious. There's work being done when you're in building thought forms, right? Because if you're not being serious, then it's your thought form is going to fall apart. And and if you're building from a desire but nature place, well, then your thought form is really just shit. So you're manifesting up nonsense. So I thought, when we're getting into these higher building, we're really, things are more serious at that point.
Right.
Not to say when you're done, from that, we don't experience joy or experience happiness in times of bliss, I guess. What do I know? We'll figure that out in some future.
Yeah. I liked how in here too, it talked a bit about going further. I think it was on page 174. Talking about the infancy of the race, the forms endured for a long time. So I think there's been references that you see in the Bible, and that at the beginning of time, the physical form lived for hundreds of, maybe thousands of years, right?
Yeah, they did, man. It was like 900 years, 300. It was shrinking, though. We saw it shrink in the Bible.
Right. But it makes it a point that, that is the way it's supposed to be, because it's like, I guess they were mastering the use of the physical body back then, right? But now here it says to go on, we're supposed to be working on purifying and coordinating the etheric body.
Well, how about this, man? How about just as our centers begin to rotate, they begin to rotate faster, right? And it picks up speed until it's really turning on itself.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I assume that would, it was moving slow then, and as and our learning speeds up after stages, as these stages progress, our initiations progress, our learning picks up. And as our learning is picking up, our centers are moving more quickly. And we're learning much more, much faster. We're able to create thought forms faster. We're able to grow these things into better thought forms much more quickly. Like, why hang on to something, right? Like, just, it's better to let it go and build, keep building faster and faster. So yeah, I guess, man, you know, you can kind of see it. Makes sense. And then next thing you know, it's just the eternal now.
Right, right. It just makes you wonder too. It seems like there's some stuff out there about you know, what can be done to encourage the physical body to live longer, like it did in these ancient times. So it says, but here it's kind of indicating that,
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
We've moved past that, because
Yeah.
from a deeper sense, you're evolving quicker now than then. Then they needed the extra time in physical body to kind of bring the synthesis to all of these things, so that then when they pass into the great unknown, it's just very, very interesting. Yeah.
There's no point of stagnation, really, you know, like, why? Like, if it's not about hanging out. There's a plan. This is a plan. It's a process. We're trying to get, you know, we're trying to get a lot of, we're gonna herd cats.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But my point there is just, why mess with it? Like, we are where we are, and just kind of let the process run as it should, as opposed to try to mitigate it and try to build back a physiological body to live longer than it's really intended to live
like
nowadays.
Carla's always, this is involutionary. That is involutionary. Yeah. Wow, that is a good point there, man.
So
yeah, and everybody's trying to live longer.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to download their, you know, want to download their consciousness into some app so they can hang out here as unevolved as they are.
That's like a whole new that's like a whole new twist on it. That,
I mean, that's detrimental, you know, to yourself at that point.
Right.
And really, anybody thinking like that is a detriment to themselves and anybody that's willing to listen to them. It's involutionary. You know, why would you want to trap an unevolved consciousness so it can stay and remain unevolved? But that's the height of ignorance. It doesn't get any worse. Essentially, and what the worst part about that is those who are aware of it and promoting it too. Like those who are actually awake and aware, and then trying to trap in an evil sense, you know, those people, or get them to do it on their own somehow. You know, I thought about this morning, man, and I'm not trying to get off on this tangent or anything, but you know, evil needs ignorance, right? And it implies ignorance, and you know, evil needs, you know, and you can substitute selfishness. All right, I don't care how you want to look. Selfishness needs ignorant people to remain selfish. Like being selfish implies that you're taking advantage of others somehow, right? And you know, this is deep, man. You know, like when people wake up, the more people that wake up, the less people there are to be taken advantage of, right? And so as people become, you know, selfless instead of selfish, there's a gigantic shift in that. But as long as people stay asleep, they can be manipulated and taken advantage of.
Right.
And this is the need for conscious awareness. It's always ignorance is always our problem. Or I don't say just ignorance, it's always a lack of awareness, of consciousness.
Yeah. Well,
That's available to us too. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like, and the crappy part of it is there's probably a lot of people here right now who can be much more awake and aware than they are, but they're stuck in some selfish, astral, glamour, illusion, Maya, you know,
well,
monsters of their own making.
It feeds, yeah, you know, so you mentioned, right, it feeds on the ignorance, it requires it. It's a useful tool for evil,
Yeah.
right? Ignorance, fear, that's probably pretty much the crux of it. But and the ignorance part is where, and I think it touches in here a little bit, that can build like a false sense of happiness for some, right? So I think it's 173 in a platitude. Some people are happy because they shut their eyes to truth or are self-hypnotized, hiding themselves within a shell of illusion. So they're happy with, I don't know what to call it. I want to call it status quo, but maybe it is. I don't know. But whatever it is that is required to feed that evil beast, they find happiness in whatever little outcome it has for them in selfish terms. So that's one way to look at some of that. And then obviously, yeah, that, and part of that is ignorance, right? That is ignorance, because you're allowing yourself to fall for the illusion and find happiness within it and keep on trucking along with whatever it is that is, I guess,
it's really no offense to anybody. That's really a pathetic thing. It's a really pathetic thing to look at from the other side. Right. Once we can see it, it's like, God, how? So then there's this, we got to come to terms and deal on it ourselves and find the compassion on those. And really work to change it. Then I guess that's what we're getting to.
That's the key, right? You mentioned compassion, being compassionate, and that's important to throw out there, because certainly we don't want to come across as being lecturous here or being kind of like pointed and direct, and because here's where I'm going with this. So you've got the ignorance aspect that creates a self sense of false happiness that people just follow and kind of truck along and fit with the status quo and keep on feeding that evil beast. And then it also feeds on the fears of people. And fear is a heck of a thing, because it will make you do things that you might not normally do because you're trying to overcome that fear in some shape or form. And even people who are thinking that they're well-intentioned are feeding off the fear and preparing themselves to deal with something in the way that they should not be dealing with it. I kind of lost my train of thought here where I was going with this, but the compassion component. So yes, because it brings us full sense. So while it, for some of us that are on this path, and I know this has probably affected you and me at times, and it probably still does, because I know I'm guilty of it every once in a while, because it draws me back. It draws me down a little bit, because it's like, I just want to slap these people in the face. Like, what the heck are you thinking? But we can't look at it that way. We just got to be compassionate that they're kind of trudging through and dealing with us on their end. And we got to remember, this is all a part of the planet cycle too. Whatever is happening here, as bad as it may seem, and as ignorant and fearful as some of these people may be, while they should be working to appropriately deal with that stuff, they're going to find themselves dealing with it in the right way at some point, maybe not this life, maybe in the next, whenever. But we know that, we can't necessarily be so judgmental. We really can't be judgmental at all, and pressuring on these people to kind of slap them in the face, change their ways, even though as hard as it is, and sometimes we want to do that, we have to be compassionate and understanding that what they're going through is something that we might have gone through in the past as well. They have to deal through it, but you have to deal through it. And at some point, you have to bring yourself to learning and understanding and reading and understanding what the truth actually is, and lifting those veils of illusion away and dissolving them away, and kind of pushing through that and looking at it through the lens that it should be, and moving towards this higher state of consciousness with the entire group. So being selfless versus selfish, and I could just go on forever and talk about this, but I think you know the point I'm trying to get to is just that we have to be compassionate and understanding that they're going to process through that, but at the same time, you got to process through it, and you have to get to this point.
All right, so I'm going to just say this anyway, because even this might be ridiculous, but we'll say it.
Say it.
Well, we built this city on rock and roll. All right. And rock and roll's pretty selfish, man.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That whole, it's a pretty selfish thing. And we were part of it, and we're all part of it at some point, right? Like the disciple lives every aspect of life here. So we get everybody lives everything out. But initially, we participated. We all did it. It's a joint creation. We built it on rock and roll. And now we have to change the polarity. I don't want to say change, but we have to shift. There has to be a shift to reality, right? Like we showed up, like everybody showed up to the party, and we're like, oh, cool, a bunch of ideas. Cool, let's do this. Let's freaking party. And this is going to be awesome. And, oh, I want this and I want that. And we all made all this nonsense, created all of this selfish, just trash. We did just to do it, essentially. And then now as we're like, oh, damn. Oh, wait. Maybe that's not what we were supposed to do here. Right? Like maybe we need to wait, hold on, everybody. And then now is this transition period.
Right.
Where it's like, okay, we partied, now we're hungover, and now we need to put this back together the right way.
Well, and I'm glad you kind of framed it that way, because it brings me back to my thought that, so yeah, you and I have been through that, right?
Yeah.
And I go back to my, it's not really on us. And I'm talking about you and me per se, to like slap people in the face and say, you gotta work through that. No, because you remember who slapped us in the face when we came to this realization? It was ourselves, dude.
Right.
So we came to that we came to that self-realization. I'm saying they all need to come there. We just need to kind of hold their hand and be compassionate along the way, and give them seeds of encouragement and seeds of information so that they can grow and put that in their toolbox and use it so that they can get there. But it's not like we can force the hand for them to get there. They have to get there on their own, but we can feed them the seeds that they need to get there.
Yeah. And all of this, as we're saying, it's all relatively the way that we're talking about, at this particular level where we're at in this book, and we're kind of talking to this level, but even more so, from those who are coming from the more elevated perspective, things are even much tighter and more one, like it's a more of a oneness aspect to this, right? So we definitely directly do have that impact. We need to, be very clear in our own. The more of us who can express reality, I want to say, the better off this whole thing is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're moving towards that. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
such a huge difference when you can see through this. And these books help to do that. They really do. These books, combined with astrology and these content and meditation and Carla and these things have all, and our conversations, they've all really helped us see through these illusions. And it's a guarantee that this is going to happen for many others. It's guaranteed.
And it's going to be a beautiful thing when it does. It's a beautiful thing now. So.
Yeah, and yeah, all that, buddy. All right, we good? You want to leave it there for the day?
Yeah, I think that's good. So we, like I said, we got through the present age and future subsection of Rule 10. We read right up to the founding of the hierarchy, which is where we will pick up next time. And we had some good discussion. It might have gotten a little bit offbeat a little bit, but I think it was good. So yeah, I think this is a good place to break. As always, it's been awesome, and I look forward to the next time we dig into this a little bit more.
Yes, sir. Okay, I'm going to stop it there. Everybody have a good day.
Take care.